Does your dog love a little chat? Well, scientists from the 70s and the 80s didn't believe in dog chat. They didn't believe that dogs talked at all. They believed that barking was non-functional. Wolves use other vocalisations a lot more than barking and only actually bark about 2.3% of the time, either to alert or to protect their territory. Dogs, however, when they were studied, were seen to bark in just about every different context out there, which is why when compared, scientists of the time presumed that dogs just like to make a racket. But you live with a dog, right? And the likelihood is, if you're here, that your dog does more than his fair share of chatterboxing. So you should know that his barks when he's hungry sound a bit different to the yip of excitement when he's out and about. And that growly frustration noise is worlds apart from the shout of an intruder. And the more modern scientists would agree with you that dogs barking is one mode of communication.
Living in a busy, often urban environment with a species that communicates primarily by vocalising, it's not surprising that dogs have picked up on a bit of our chat and try and talk to us when their subtle signs of body language or their chemical communication goes unnoticed. Also, we bred them for a long time to bark for various different reasons, guard the property or warn off intruders. But enough of the history of dogs barking. We're here to give you our life hacking advice to help you and your dogs share some quiet time.
You see, ultimately dogs can bark for a number of reasons. Making sure that we understand why your dog is barking will mean that we can apply the right treatment for a quieter life for you. If your child was screaming, "Mum, I'm hungry," and you replied with, "It's all right, dear, it's just the postman," it's pretty unlikely that the shouting is going to stop at that point. More than likely, the shouting is going to escalate. Maybe it gets louder or more frequent as a result of frustration or hunger. Equally, if your child was screaming because they were scared of a fox that had suddenly appeared in the garden and all you did was throw a bag of crisps at them, that's pretty unlikely to work as well. So, we really need to work out why your dog is barking before we work out the most effective way to, well, shh. Now, there are 3 things you need to do next.
A dog's bark has a mixture of regular or harmonic and irregular, noisy, acoustic sounds that string together to make the sound of dogs barking. These strings of sound vary in both pitch and tone and come in patterns that are connected with what the dog is saying, much like our conversations. Studies point towards women, of course, being better than men at being able to listen and decipher the dog conversations, but humans on the whole are pretty good at hearing a dog vocalisation and then matching it to the situation that it was made in. So, what does it sound like when your dog makes a noise? Shut your eyes and have a guess. But here are, in our experience, the top 5 most common sounds to look out for. Number 1. Like most mammals, short and quiet vocalisations are often not considered the biggest sign of confidence. It's most often seen at the beginning of a warning, just before the dog strings together a longer sounding pattern to warn you of what's outside. Or else it can be used to ask a scary thing to move away. It can be used by dogs around novel items or situations, but it's generally a sign that the dog just isn't really sure, but is quite curious. Number 2, growly barks. Barking that has a higher pitch within it is very often precursed with a little rolling rrr. It's seen in play all the time and during invitations of play as well. Often when unnoticed, this sort of vocalisation can escalate into loud, pitchy frustration barks or else very loud excitement barks. It can be self-triggered when a dog wants your attention or else triggered by something in the environment when it happens. Go backwards. Number 3. There is a little string of barks that's very, very common, and it's usually made by dogs who are simultaneously telling the oncoming thing to go away and alerting us, their family, that possible danger is coming. It's often heard when you knock on a door, and variations of it are heard when the postman comes, whereas when you arrive home from days at work. It's broadly territorial or like a warning cry, and often the dog is barking at the thing that's coming as well as back to you to tell you it's coming. Number 4, lonely howls. Dogs most often howl when they're alone. They call out to see who else can hear them around, and this can become sad and long if the dog is lonely. Dogs often also howl as a group chorus though, and this tells others the strength of the group of dogs that's there. And this is why, if the whole family howls, the dog very often joins along too. Number 5, last but not least, is crying. Whimpering, short and long pitched noises, easily recognisable as a cry, are usually just that. They can be brought about by loneliness and boredom, but they're very often signs of pain. So if your dog is frequently crying, then it's probably time to get them checked by a vet. There are plenty of other noises, not to mention all the different types of growling, which are usually distance increasing, but not always, but should be taken a bit more seriously, especially if they're low and long. But for now, stick to this list of barks and try and work out if your dog's bark matches any of the ones we've described. Next time he has a bark, close your eyes and have a listen. What does it sound like?
Once you've listened to the bark and you've tried to work out what your dog is trying to communicate, it's time to watch him. Generally speaking, dogs, like humans, continue to do more of something for 2 main reasons. Either it feels good or it works. Giving to charity feels good. Going to work earns you money. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not always that simple. Ranting on Facebook? Well, the comments you get either make you feel better, some get a thrill from the conflict, and others just love the sound of their own voice. So, you're going to watch for 2 things. What is the dog bark focused at? Where's the dog facing? And what happens after your dog has barked? Some dogs bark to drive the postman away. And you know what? It pays off every time, because the postman attempts to break in and fails and leaves every single day. I know, worst home intruder ever. But as far as the dog is concerned, he's a household hero. Some dogs bark out the window at anything that moves for the same reason. It's like a dog football match. Runners versus cyclists for the semi-cup final. Some bark when your youngest child crawls too close to them. Woof! Back off! And soon you rescue the situation. But as far as the dog's concerned, it worked. Some bark at you. And what do you do when your dog barks at you? Do you give them eye contact? Verbal acknowledgement? Even a shout of shut up is enough attention to maintain barking for many dogs. Does your dog bark at moving light or shadows or at the wall, seemingly for no reason other than it must feel good?
In this video, we're going to invite you into the magical world of dog training, and we're going to give you a little sneak peek behind the scenes. We're going to do the undoable and we're going to get your dog to zip it. But how will you know if you are actually making any progress? Sadly, dog training isn't all about running through the fields, playing ball and having doggy cuddles. There's a bit of admin to do first. What I want you to do is draw a quick table with 3 columns. At the top of column 1, write day, column 2, frequency, and column 3, duration. In the day column, I want you to write the numbers 1 to 15 because we're going to track this for 15 days now. Now go and stick this on your fridge, somewhere super accessible, and keep a pen handy. At the end of each day, we're going to write down the number of barking episodes in the frequency column. In the duration column, this is the total amount of time that the dog was barking during the day. Now, before we start counting anything, we do have to make sure that we've kept our side of the doggy-human contract. We need to make sure that their basic needs are being met. We understand that life gets in the way sometimes. You can't always take your dog on a 2-hour romp across the fields playing ball and having fun. But do please make sure that A, your dog isn't in pain. B, your dog has nice, easy access to water. C, your dog has been able to toilet when they required. And D, that you've fed your dog enough. Remember that puppies do require feeding more frequently than adult dogs. Okay, so we're starting to build a picture of why and how your dog is barking. On to the 3-step life hack process to reduce and ideally remove that barking altogether.
Whether he's watching sport out the window, barking at his human for attention, or just shouting through excitement, mental stimulation is very often one of the main reasons dogs bark. It's boring staying in, and especially when humans aren't giving you doggy crosswords to solve. So here is a super quick way to check if mental stimulation is the key to the barking. Many of you lucky people won't need steps 2 and 3, and you're going to find the answer after this first step. I'm going to give you 3 really quick things to do with your dog. Do 1 in the morning, 1 at lunch, and 1 in the evening. Rope the kids in if you can, because these games should only take around 5 minutes. Hand targeting, where we train your dog to bop your hand. Spin, teach your dog to spin one way or the other, and find your dinner, where we set up a little treasure trail for your dog's dinner. All 3 of these will really stimulate his mind, and if boredom is playing a part, you'll soon see, or rather hear, the difference simple little games can make. Remember to continue counting your dog's barking so that you know if the magic is working. Now at breakfast, for the next few days, we're going to teach your dog to bop your hand. This is a guessing game for your dog, which will really get your dog's brain going. So grab a bunch of your dog's breakfast, and if he's not mad about it, add a little bit of ham and cheese. Put your hand out to the side of your dog's face, and as soon as they show interest, say yes, remove your target, and feed your dog a bit of the food. Repeat this 3 times, and then on the 4th, hold out. Wait for the dog to actually touch your hand before saying yes and feeding the dog. Repeat this, and when your dog seems to have nailed it, tell him to touch and then pop the hand target out. Spin. At lunchtime, get some nice treats for your dog ready. Pop 1 in your hand and show it to your dog. With your dog following it, turn your dog in a full circle and then say yes and feed your dog. Repeat this step until your dog seems to know to go in a full circle for the food. Once he's clocked the idea, try doing the half circle with your hand and then pull your hand away to see if your dog remembers to keep turning to complete the spin. Once he is completing the spin, by himself, use less and less of your hand until you can just signal a flick. Once your dog gets that, and it may take a few lessons, start saying spin just before the hand flick each time. Find your toy or your dinner. This one's really fun to get the kids involved in. Grab your dog's dinner, head out to the garden and hide it around the garden. Keep 1 handful and hold the dog's collar. Say, find it, and toss that handful out to start the treasure trail for your dog. Show your dog he's got to search for his food. You can also play with toys by 1 person holding the dog whilst the other person teases the dog with the toy and then hides it. Send the dog out, asking them to find it.
If you've got a dog that's worried, scared, frustrated, or even angry at something through the window, or maybe it started that way and now it's just a bit of a habit, barking at any old Tom, Dick or Fido to pass the house. If the first hack didn't work for you, then this one will. First off, we need to prevent your dog from seeing the things that they're barking at when you're not training them. Else all that's going to happen is this is going to undo your hard work. Let's say they're barking out of the front room window. We need to make sure that when the dog is in the room with us, the curtains are closed. Please don't suddenly start locking your dog out of the room, else you're going to end up with a different type of barking problem. Worst case scenario, just put something up at the window so that it blocks access for your dog. They can't get up there and they can't see out. The new rule is that when access to the window is open, it's time for school and that you're focused on the task as well. We're going to start as far away from the window as possible. So far, the dog can hardly see it. What we're going to do is we're going to train your dog to do something really simple, in this case, a down. The hard part comes in as we start to move closer and closer to the window. If your dog already knows a down, that's a brilliant start, but I would suggest that you watch the rest of the video as there are a few bits that we do in a specific way that you're going to want to get right for this exercise. We're going to practice this 3 short sessions every day. Get a treat in your hand, show it to your dog, pop the treat on their nose, but don't let them eat it. Move the treat down towards the floor, and as soon as they hit the deck, say yes and feed your dog 3 times in quick succession. I want you to repeat the exercise, and when your dog is following the food really easily, you can start to say the word down just before you move the treat down towards the floor. As time progresses, you can begin to say down and then wait a few seconds to see if your dog will lie down on their own. If they do, superb. If not, just carry on practicing a little bit, but maybe start moving your hand a little bit less each time. Once your dog is going down really smoothly, then when you're going to give those 3 treats, you can start to space them out. So 1 second between them, 2 seconds between them, 3 seconds between them. Once your dog can do 3 seconds, then after your dog goes into the down, you can start to step away from them. 1 pace, return, feed. Then 2 paces, return, feed, and then 3 paces. When your dog's nailing that, you can start to add in spins, star jumps, and even the funky chicken if you fancy. But here's the really important bit. Each time you train, you're going to repeat the whole session, but a bit closer to the window. Don't rush this bit. If your dog starts getting distracted and then goes and barks outside the window, just stop the session and the treats. In the next session, start off at the same location where you just left off and continue your training. If they bark again here, end the session and the treats again. This time, when you come back for your next session, start a bit further away from the window, and I'm sure you'll progress past the difficult spot in no time. If your dog does still bark, it suggests that he's really scared or really frustrated by what's going on outside the window. And at this point, you should really seek some professional guidance in the form of a local trainer or behaviourist. More than likely, you'll be progressing smoothly. When you get to the point that your dog can manage to lie down in close proximity to the window, with stuff going on outside and you doing the funky chicken inside, then you can start to allow supervised periods of access to the window. Remember, keep your eye on them. Keep the sessions short and sweet to begin with. What this hack does is show to the dog that even if they don't bark and simply lie down, that people and dogs still pass by and nothing scary actually ever happens. During these sessions, they start to get used to the happenings of the outside world outside of the window.
If the steps the boys have given you haven't worked, and you think it's quite likely that your dog has just learnt to love a bit of a shout, then this last step will respect his need for a sing-song, but also make it clear when you need him to keep stum. What we're going to do here is we're going to teach your dog to bark when you ask him to, but also to be quiet when you ask him to as well. First off, get his favourite toy or else a handful of his favourite food. Tease him with it a bit and then hold it up too high for him out of his reach. This might need a bit of prompting, but it's highly likely that your dog will get so irritated by not being able to get the thing they want that they will shout at it. Sometimes when people struggle with this step, we tell them to have a little waff at their dog, and that often gets the dog started, even though it makes you feel like a bit of an idiot. Say yes as soon as your dog barks. Reward even those silent snaps that don't have any noise to them. Repeat this again and again, and when your dog is barking as soon as you pull the food or toy away, start saying speak just before the withdrawal of that tease. Practice this a few times too, and then try it with no tease at all, just by saying speak and then putting your hand in the position. Don't worry, the next bit is the quiet bit. So now, instead of saying speak, what you're going to do is you're going to say quiet. You're going to keep still. You're going to wait a millisecond to start with, say yes and reward the dog. Repeat this, waiting longer and longer before saying yes and rewarding the dog. Lastly, you can start mixing this up. So you can ask your dog to speak and then quiet and then quiet and then speak. Reward them each time they get it right. It's a bit like a game of Simon Says. Now, from now on, you can start your day with a lovely little sing-song with your dog just to get it out of his system. But you can also ask him to be quiet when you're on that all-important work call as well. Remember to pay him for being a good boy so that he's a good boy again in the future. As a quick side note here, it's important to respect that our dogs, just like us, do need to have time and space to talk. So make sure you respect their voice as well and really listen and try and work out what it is they're trying to tell you. Good luck. Please let us know if these hacks have worked in the comments below. If they haven't, it's probably worth speaking to your local dog trainer to make sure that you haven't missed something.
We really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're looking for more ideas on how to mentally stimulate your dog, then check out the other YouTube videos on this channel. If you've suddenly got the bug for dog training, why not sign up to the 30 days of Canine Science on www.caninescience.online.
If you liked the video, please subscribe for more content like this. If you don't want to miss out on our life hacks for dog owners, then make sure you press that bell and be notified each time we release a free video. If you've got some ideas on how people can stop barking, then drop your suggestions in the comments and we will see you soon. Good luck.